Today we're going to talk about women in America in the 1950s. World War II brought unprecedented economic growth to the United States. This booming economy created a large demand for labor, especially with many American men serving in the military. This offered new job opportunities for women and minorities. Women worked in new jobs in the war industry or in filling jobs vacated by those who went to war. About 300,000 American women served in the military during World War II. At the end of the war, women in jobs that had been traditionally filled by men were fired to make way for returning male veterans. Employment rates for women, however, continued to increase in the 1950s, but women were again mostly limited to what were considered, quote, women's jobs, such as teaching, clerical work, domestic labor, and being store clerks. As the U.S. deindustrialized and as its service sector grew, many middle-class white women worked as typists and secretaries who were unable to rise higher in unemployment ranks due to gender discrimination. Opportunities for African American women continued, though, to be very limited, so that many could only work as domestic laborers, though some were school teachers and in the North, clerical workers. Women faced huge social pressures to marry young, some as early as their late teens or early 20s, and to have a big family. Women who could attend college were expected to go, but only to find husbands, not a career path. Women were pressured to be stay-at-home mothers, if their families could afford it. Most minority families, however, could not afford this. Single mothers were shunned. Cold War propaganda transmitted the idea that strong nuclear families, that is a family made up of a man, a woman, and their children, would help the United States beat the USSR. Not only were women marrying younger than before, they were having babies right away and continued to do so for decades. Take a look at the graph in front of you. You'll notice that from 1940 to 1960, the number of families with 3 children doubled, and the number of families having a 4th child quadrupled. The media portrayed domesticity as the ideal for women. Television shows and women's magazines claimed that women were most responsible for their children, their husband's happiness, and well-being. Women were told to keep their houses and appearances flawless. The show that you're looking at here was a program called Leave It to Beaver, which you can see shows the white nuclear family with very specific gender roles. And you can see that domesticity, in other words, the home or family life, is considered ideal. The first mass-produced suburb was a town called Levittown, located in New York, and it was built in 1951. The homes there were very affordable. Many returning veterans were able to buy a house because of something that was known as the GI Bill, which was a law that said that the federal government would back loans to World War II veterans. The homes were built very quickly and cheaply, and mass production resulted in what looks like, as you can see in the picture, a uniformity of design and suburban neighborhoods that were basically the same, and they popped up all over America. Millions of African Americans at this time moved out of the South and into northeastern, midwestern, and western cities during what was known as the Great Migration, which caused white flight of whites to the suburbs. Life in suburbia encouraged conformity. There was pressure to, quote, keep up with the Joneses with material purchases, buying things like cars and appliances. New forms of media, in particular, the television, promoted a consumer culture, with household products and items being strongly marketed to women. Look at these images here on slide 8 that were printed in popular magazines in the 1950s. According to these images, What do you think life was like for suburban women in the 1950s? Write your responses on the handout that you're working on. Today, we're going to continue investigating the question of what was life like for suburban women in the 1950s. Specifically this question, is the image of the happy 1950s housewife accurate? Why? Or why not? In the next few days, we're going to examine 4 documents in order to develop a historical claim. Thanks for watching, and be sure when you're finished your notes to turn them in.